Alright, let's get into this. Okay, let's start off looking at the new Pokemon that got revealed. I'm just going to be going on the website and clicking on the links as they come up. The first one is the Titan. The Titan is a big Pokemon. It's got thick fat and slush rush. Thick fat, probably not too great on it because Ice never wants to try to beat Ice in the first place. Unless this got Heavy Slam, in which case marginally useful perhaps, but nothing compared to Slush Rush. This of course does limit it, in theory, to Hail teams, and as a pure Ice type, that does not give you much, right? Nobody ever uses Bear Tick on a Hail team. You want secondary typings because everybody's Ice. What do you bring to the team besides being Ice? We're all Ice too, right? That's not useful. So pure Ice types don't really do too well in my experience on Hail teams. Also, this doesn't look too fast. The best case scenario, we're thinking Dreadnought speed maybe. This Pokemon sort of reminds me of Dreadnought a lot. And so, or maybe Crabominable even, I don't know. So it's probably going to be pretty slow. Doubling a really slow speed is not particularly good, right? If you're like, 180 something speed, a level 100, and then you double that, well, you're not outspeeding, a ton of Pokemon in the OU tier. So you need to have at least base 65 speed, I would say, to be a decent Slush Rusher. And I doubt this is going to get that. Now, as a Trick Roomer, that could be interesting, perhaps, although Crabominable still didn't make it work and add a secondary stab. But, it's a new generation. Maybe they'll give us some things to make it stand out that we're not thinking about. That being said, if you're a Trick Roomer, well, Slush Rush isn't helping you, and Thick Fat isn't particularly useful, although I guess I'll take it. So hopefully it has a good hidden ability that makes up for it. Otherwise, I don't really see this being very good, personally. But, it is what it is. There's lots of Pokemon that come out in every generation, and they don't end up being good. That's just sort of the luck of the draw. Alright, next up we got Fido. Fido is pretty adorable, but just like the Yamper in the previous generation, I liked the Yamper and didn't really like Bolton that much, and Bolton was pretty disappointing. Now, Fido here is a pure Fairy type, which pure Fairy isn't awful. Of course, Fairy the typing is quite good, but I think about All Creamy in last generation. All Creamy was pretty bad, and Milcery is never seen in a World Cup, as far as I know. Similarly, if you go back to some other food-based Pokemon, you've got like Slurpuff, of course. Slurpuff's pre-evolution is really good, right? The name will come to me eventually because it gets access to Belly Drum and Unburden, so that's quite good. And then you've got Spritzee or the Aromatisse line, and that isn't too bad. It has a decent defensive utility, but Own Tempo isn't a particularly strong ability, and I don't really know what this would have offensively or defensively to make it stand out from the other Fairy types. And so, overall, I don't know. I'm not particularly sold on this Pokemon as a competitive Pokemon. As a Pokemon design, I think this is fantastic. A bred Pokemon that's all doughy, and because it's made out of dough, which can rise, it puffs up its body. I could definitely see that being really interesting with fluid animation. That's sort of cool. On Tempo, no, not a fantastic ability for it. But maybe if you gave it something like, give it Flash Fire, that'd be funny. Although I don't really know how that works. Maybe it'll get a cool hidden ability, who knows. Alright, the last one that we have to talk about is Paldea and Wooper. So the region's name is Paldea, and that's fine, whatever, who cares. But Paldea and Wooper is going to be a regional form, and it's going to be Poison and Ground, which actually isn't too bad at typing. And then you look at its ability, and it gets Water Absorb. So Water Absorb in conjunction with Poison Ground is quite good because you get 2 immunities for the price of 1 on this team, right? You've got the Ground for the electrics, you've got Water Absorb so that you don't take one of your weaknesses. So that's great. And Poison Ground is not bad typing, right? You're a Poison type, you're beaten by Steels, but then hey, I'm a Ground type, I can beat the Steel types. So Only type that really would beat this down would be like Skarmory or Celesteela, right? Those Pokemon, of course, are going to beat you on all fronts. So you gotta watch out for that. I mean, this isn't going to have a farm move or anything. This will probably have Toxic. That'll be pretty annoying. Maybe it'll have Stealth Rock. And then you need to have Recover on this to be good at all. Because right now, Quagsire is quite a good Pokemon, but it relies on two things. The first thing it relies on is Recover. And if you don't have some kind of good recovery option, either Recover and or Shower Up, then you're not going to be a good Pokemon. Because Quagsire stats aren't very good. The other thing that Quagsire normally relies on is Unaware. And while Unaware is a very valuable ability, and it is why Quagsire sees such high usage, I think this can still be a good Pokemon in the lower tiers, particularly like Enyu, where a lot of those fighting types generally end up. Right? If I'm a Quagsire with really strong defense, which I think this one will, because I think just based off how it talks, it seems like this one is going to be even more defensively oriented. Then, even you could probably live an Earthquake from a non-boosted, like, Pissimian. I don't know what will end up being in the game. But you might be able to be a really good fighting type check, in my opinion, in addition to having a water and electric immunity, which is really valuable. So I don't think that this will suffer too much from having lost Unaware. But maybe it'll have some other great ability that we don't know about. And that'll make up for it. So those are the new Pokemon that were shown off. I think they're all pretty interesting. Of course, Wooper's is good, and I did like Fido, and I'm not as big of a fan of the Whale, but the Whale could impress me yet. We shall see. Now let's move on to the school. The school in the region is again going to be based off of your game, either based off of oranges or whatever and grapes. So that's fine. You're going to take classes with your Pokemon and with other students. I don't know if this is going to end up being really tedious though. It sounds sort of cool, but then if you play something like Fire Emblem Three Houses and you realize all that means is getting into a menu and spamming the A button over and over again just to get some small incremental stat boost, if that's what it's going to look like, then it's not going to be really that interesting. On the other hand, it could be more something like it was in Galar, where Galar had that whole motif, or I guess framing device, whatever you want to call it, of, hey, I'm a trainer in a semi-professional sports league of sorts, and while that theming was cool, it didn't really go anywhere beyond that, and at the end of the day, you were just fighting in gym battles like you always do. So it could be that this theming doesn't really impact the game at all. So I'm going to reserve judgment to see how impactful this actually ends up being, if it's fun at all, or if it just ends up being a grind after a while, or if it doesn't really intrude upon the game at all and ends up being a cute theming, and that's about it. Here you've got this director of the academy. He looks dull. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you got this Joker over here. Yeah, I don't really like him. Looks like he got a Rotom phone or something in there. I guess that's okay. I don't know what his shoes are doing though. That's sort of weird. And then you've got, let's see who else. You got these guys here. They're people you meet along the way. I think they're supposed to be sort of like rivals as well. Can't just have one strong rival. We have to have multiple rivals. If you have more rivals, that's more people that people might be interested in, right? Instead of having just one strong character that people might be turned off by. If you have multiple, then eventually one of them will stick for you, right? Not a fan of that. I gotta say, this Eevee bag sort of creeps me out. Imagine if you existed in the Pokemon world and you were an Eevee, and you see a bag that's modeled after your body to the point where it looks sort of like they're wearing a bag made out of your corpse. That doesn't seem great. Also, this is some really skinny legs, so I'm just going to throw that out there. Anyway, enough said about these guys. We don't care about them. All right. The mechanic of writing on the legendaries was shown off, finally, so we can talk about it. So I don't know how you're going to get the legendary Pokemon if it's going to be super early in the game, like it was in Gen 7, where Tapu Koko just shows up and is like, hey, here, have a Z bracelet. Or if, and then, you know, instead of giving you a Z bracelet, they just join up with you from that point. Or if it's after you get halfway through the first part of one of the stories, or who knows how you get these guys, right? The problem is that what I don't understand, did this Pokemon lose their abilities, or are they just going to have all their abilities from the get-go? Because they have the ability to fly, or to glide at least, to climb rocks, to surf, to be a bike themselves. And while the bike, I guess, is fine because you got the Tauros ability pretty early on into Sun and Moon, and the bikes aren't necessarily something that Pokemon gates away from you for too long. It does seem sort of funny to just throw wide open the gates right from the get-go and say, here's the bike, and a glider, and a rock climber, and a surfer all at once, because then that's just opening up the entire map. And I know this is supposed to be an open world game, I understand that, but it seems like it would be more like a game, right? Not just a Pokemon game, but just more gaming in general, if you had to earn those abilities somehow, and the open world aspect sort of makes you go out of your way to get these if you choose to. Of course, you don't have to have them, but if you want to make the game easier, then you have to go and do those things, right? That seems more gamey. So I'll be interested to see how this actually ends up being. On that note, though, the reason I mention this is that I think it's funny. If Pokemon is really going to give you all 4 modes at once, right? Give you the bike mode, give you the climb and the glide, and the surfing mode all at the same time. If they do that, then why are they giving you a glide Pokemon? Okay, in Legends Arceus, they made Braviary glide because they wanted you to use the other Pokemon, right? If I give you a Pokemon that can just fly by its own, then that completely invalidates Sneasler, for example, and really invalidates all the Pokemon. But if I give you a Pokemon that glides, then you still have to use Sneasler to get up high, so then you can glide, right? That makes sense. But in this game, if it's only one Pokemon that does all those things, then why would I need to glide? I could just fly. And let me go up and down and climb and mount and bank and do all those things that the flying thing does. More like it was with Latios and Latios in Gen 6. That seems like that would make more sense. So I'm not exactly sure why they're doing a glide on this. But hey, you're the boss. I don't really quite get it. Maybe it'll make more sense when we get in the game. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. So the Terastal phenomenon, as they're calling it, and it is pronounced Terastal apparently, is this new gimmick where a Pokemon becomes crystallized. And this was hinted back with that very first trailer. At the last second, they had that Pokeball flying in front of crystal or ice, and I couldn't tell what it was. We made that whole video back in the day. You can go check it out, but at this point, you know, it's one of those videos that's in the past and doesn't really bear anything at all on the present discussion, because the present discussion is what it is and not speculation. But anyway, they did hint at this, and now we finally know what it is and what it's all about. So the trainer gets this ball. Is it at the bottom here? Yeah, this ball right here. And this ball is going to be able to collect Terastal energy. And Terastal energy is going to allow you to Terastallize your Pokemon. Now this is interesting because this means you can't spam it like you could spam Z moves or Mega Stones, Mega Evolution, right? You can only do it if you have enough energy. Now I'm assuming if you're in the battle tower or if you're online, of course the energy will just refill at the end of each battle, just like all your other items that are consumed get refilled. So that's not a problem. But in the main story, that means that you can't just spam it on all the little grunts. You have to conserve it. I'm assuming they'll be fairly generous in the amount of energy spots that you can grab along the way, because this is a Pokemon game and have been making them extraordinarily easy. But there is that at least. So they're going to encourage you to maybe be a little more wise in your consumption of the energy. In any case, one thing to note about this is that this Terra Orb is going to be a held item by the trainer. So this isn't something the Pokemon holds, this is something that the trainer holds, and they apply it to a Pokemon in battle, which means, unless I'm missing something, that the Pokemon that's going to Terastallize doesn't need to hold anything special or particular, and you can use it on any Pokemon at any given time. They don't need to be holding something that'll resonate or anything. You just do it and it works. And then they can hold, choice specs, heavy duty boots, whatever they want. Okay, so let's talk about how this works. So you can see here that each Pokemon here, we've got like flowers growing out of your head, because that's going to tell me, okay, they terastallized into a grass type. Similarly here with fire and here with water. Now, of course, these Pokemon, they do match the typing that's growing out of their head, and they all get these little funny hats to go along with it in case it wasn't obvious as to which type it is. We can see here in this key art that Eevee has this normal type hat and has just, normal type gems. So that is cool. But just because they're showing it like this doesn't mean that they can only get grass or fire or water. You can actually get a type for so you can have this be a water or grass. You could have a grass Quaxley, for instance, if you get the correct kind of Quaxley. So as they say here, there are 18 types, and there are countless combination of Pokemon and Tera types in it. And it has been confirmed in other places that are more leaky and less official that every Pokemon will get all 18 varieties. So they're not going to limit it so that Heatran can't get a grass Terastallize, and they're not going to limit it so that I don't even know what. So that Rillaboom can't get an electric Terastallize. I have no clue. I'm just making this stuff off the top of my head. But every Pokemon can Terastallize into everything. And right off the bat, that seems like a waste for a lot of types, right? A lot of Pokemon don't have moves or abilities that can take advantage of so many of these types. But that will be resolved at a later point, but they have not officially revealed it yet. So I'm not going to talk about it, especially because at the current moment, I don't actually have that much information concerning that specifically. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But do note that that will be something that will be talked about in the future, just not now. Okay, so we can see here that Eevee gets a different hat depending on the type. So this is both a good and bad. On the good side, when the opposing trainer terastallizes their Pokemon, I can actually look at that and say, oh, this is the type that terastallized into. I actually sort of appreciate the hats because beyond just the aesthetic, it does sort of unambiguify the typing, because rock and ground sort of look similar, and if dragon is done in sort of a goldish orange color, then even dragon can look somewhat similar. I think sort of Savali and Arceus, how it's difficult to tell what typing that is. Is that a ghost Savali? Is it a poison Savali? Is it a psychic Savali? Is it a fairy Savali? Who knows? They're all shades of pink and purple, and it's really hard to keep them apart. Is that a steel Savali or a normal Savali? Well, just hit it with a fighting type move and it'll be fine. So this hat system should, in theory, make it very unambiguous as to what typing they terastallized into. It will, however, make Pokemon Showdown really a nightmare to code. I don't know how the heck they're going to do that, because all these models, of course, are just going to have the Pokemon model plus a filter plus a little extra 3D model that you pop on the top and you call it a day. I'm assuming it's a little more complicated than that, but probably not a lot more complicated. However, for Showdown, how difficult is that going to be for them to do? Because they don't even have the models, they just have the little JPEGs or the GIFs or whatever. And that seems like it's going to be annoying, so we'll see how they end up doing that. Now, one other thing to note is that the terastallization lasts until the end of the battle. So it's not, you can switch out, apparently. According to this, you can switch out and come back and you'll still be terastallized. Now, I'm assuming if you faint, then you will lose that, just like you did with Mega Evolutions. So, for example, if I had a Revive or a Max Revive in-game, and I had a Mega Blastoise and it fainted, I could revive that Blastoise, but then it would come back just as a normal Blastoise. And I'm assuming that it's exactly the same here, where if your Pokemon that's terastallized faints and you revive it, then it won't get it back. But that's just an assumption. The one thing I did forget to mention, and this is the bad thing, they made it so that it's very clear as to which Pokemon's type that they've turned into, right? The bad thing is that before that, I have no clue what Tera Types have. They're called Tera Types, right? So I can guess, because certain Pokemon will generally use a Tera Type of a certain typing, right? As the metagame develops and Pokemon become more obvious, right? If I had a Mega Manectric, for instance, maybe it'll Terastallize into a... Well, not Mega Manectric. You can't have a Mega and Terra Pokemon at the same time. Better example, Ralts. Maybe I had a Gallade, and I wanted to Terastallize it into a Dark type, because that would be the most optimal. Or maybe I have a Drifblim and I want to Terastallize it into a pure Ghost type, because that would be most optimal. Who knows what it ends up being? Point is that if those become solidified in the metagame, then sure, I can guess. But that's still what it is guess. I'm not going to see a Dragon type Coco, probably. And I'm probably not going to be seeing a Fairy type Landorus. It just wouldn't make any sense. But I could see a Rock type Landorus, I could see a Ground type Landorus, I could see a Dark type Landorus, I could see a... I don't even know what else type Landorus. You could see all sorts of things, and you wouldn't know what it was until it was too late. That's the problem. Now, maybe in Team Preview, they will have sort of a glow or an aura that could tell you, hey, this Pokemon has the ability to Terastallize into this typing. Because there's 6 Pokemon on their team, all 6 can Terastallize, and you're going to have to guess as to which one is going to Terastallize, and then also what type it has. That's a lot of combinations for a lot of Pokemon that could potentially have a lot of options, right? You have the option of Terastallizing into one of your stab types. You have, or one of your original types, right? You also have the option to Terastallize into a coverage type, and many Pokemon have multiple coverage options that are native to their moveset. So you have literally no clue. And that just makes the game really volatile. And also, generally speaking, I think the Terastal is going to favor offensive gameplay, because defensively you can Terastallize. You can get a typing that will make you more defensively difficult to take down, perhaps. Although not always, because I feel like usually dual typings are preferred to single typings, defensively even. But especially in a pinch, maybe you want to live Earth Power with your Heatran, so you Terastallize, and you had a normal type, because why not? Or you had a flying type even, because you could still do that. You could have a flying type Heatran, right? You don't have a single flying type move, you have no intention of clicking a flying type move, but you want to throw off your opponent, so you have flying type on it. You need to defensively Terastallize, and you can get your flying type, and all of a sudden the opposing Heatran goes for Earth Power, you go for Earth Power, you knock them out, and they can't hit you. That's an option. I'm not saying that's the best option, but that is an option that I can come up with off the top of my head. And that is an option of a defensive Terastal. Or Terastallization? Whatever, however you say it. But generally speaking, this is going to be much more favorably offensively, because it's going to either give you a strong coverage option and turn a Pokemon that normally gets beat by something into a Pokemon that can beat something, right? Imagine I'm a Gyarados with Water Flying. I have Earthquake, but my Earthquake isn't Stab. It's not strong enough to 2-KO the Toxapex. Well, guess what? If I Terastallize and I get the Ground typing, now I'm a Ground type Gyarados, I 2-KO the Toxapex and just completely blow it out of the water. I'd probably even do more than just 2-KO. It's probably like 70-something% or something. And so then that Toxapex is dead, and now my Gyarados, of course, it still is a Ground type, so it doesn't get stabbed on its liquidation or whatever, but it's going to be very strong, and it's going to be able to beat Pokemon that normally wouldn't be able to beat it. What does that remind you of? It reminds you of Z Crystals and Z moves. So the spontaneity and unpredictability of Z crystals, in addition to having it be just for the rest of the battle. There are downsides to it. For example, you do lose all the other stab typings that you had before, but this still does present a lot of offensive, explosive options to the player, and I think it will heavily favor offensive gameplay, which personally I'm a fan of, but also it can be really frustrating, right? Dynamax is cool because it makes the metagame completely offensive and wild and sporadic, but it also means that you can't really win that consistently, just because a lot of it's just ended up to who Dynamax to the right time. And this is going to be like Z crystals in that once you have a Terastallization, you can continue to use that Tera form to beat down your opponent. Before they could protect or they could switch out to scout for a Z move. Now they can't really do that, so it's going to be a little bit different in that regard. But that's okay. We'll see if it ends up getting banned. I'm personally leaning towards this idea that it does get banned, which is sort of crazy. And in Gen 8, I think if people before Gen 8 came out, if I had said this is going to get banned, you would have just thought I was a bad Pokemon player, because Gen 7 people were saying Z crystals are busted, they need to get banned, and then never did, even though they were busted. But you know, people said, oh, you can just play around Z crystals, you just have to get good. But in Gen 8, people said, okay, no, Dynamax is so bad it has to be banned. And this might just be that bad, although it doesn't have max airstream, so there's that at least. There's one thing I want you to consider. So, the way this works is I get a new type, and that type overwrites all the other types I previously had. So if I'm an Eevee, as is showing here, this Eevee is a normal type, and it was a normal type, so that's fine. This Eevee was a normal type, and now it is a water type, a pure water type. If I had a type with multiple types, I don't know, give me an example. There's no example here, they're all monotype. If I had a Charizard, the Charizard were fire flying, and I Terastallize it into a fire type, then it loses its flying type and it stays a pure fire type, which actually is somewhat good for Charizard, especially if it is not running boots, because then your Charizard can only take 25% from Stealth Rock. So that's something to consider. But besides that defensive utility, it does of course mean now you're weak to ground and you lost a flying stab, but there is an advantage to choosing the type that you started with. And besides the fact that generally that Pokemon will have a more expanded move pool in its primary typings, the other big advantage is that you actually get a bigger boost. You can see here it says, when a Terastallized Pokemon uses a move that matches its Tera type and one of its original typings, the boost to that move's power will be even greater. So I have it from a source that's going to be another 1.5 boost. So it'll be like a choice specs boost. But we have to be careful about how we calc this. So I'm going to pull up the calc, and we're going to look at Charizard, and we're going to put Charizard in the sun, because that's what Charizard likes to do. We're going to give it choice specs, and we're going to face a Blissey. Now notice what I've done to this Charizard here. I've gotten rid of its fire typing entirely, and I left the flying typing because it doesn't really matter. We're not using any flying moves. But what we need to do is we need to give it a +1 boost for a stab, and we have to give it another +1 boost for its Terastallization. Okay, so that's 1 for stab and 1 for its Tera type. So now it's +2. So a +2, which is 1.5 plus 0.5. Now it's +2. Overheat, of course, Focus Blast still kills from Solar Power choice specs, that's cool. But if I wanted to spam fire moves, Overheat also has a chance to Oko Blissey in the sun, which is quite powerful. And Weather Ball does 2-hit KO quite safely. So you've got Weather Ball 2-hit KOing Blissey, no problems in the sun, which is really great if you want to spam Weather Ball, right? So this is going to be a very powerful Charizard. You could set up similar calcs with Porygon or with Landorus Eye. I've seen people worried about those in the past. So it all comes down to exactly, some of those most powerful breaker Pokemon how strong can we really stack it? And it's going to really favor those kinds of Pokemon because they can stack their Tera Type and their normal type and get an even bigger boost than you normally would get. So those are going to be the ones I think that will push it towards getting banned if it gets banned. Now, once again, I'll stress, make sure you do the calc correctly. If I were to leave this as Fire Flying and then just give this a +1 boost, then that would be a 1.5 boost for stab times a 1.5 boost for the Tera Type, which I've just applied to the special attack here. And 1.5 times 1.5 is 3/2 times 3/2, which is 9/4, and that is greater than 2. That's 9/4, which is greater than 2. So you're actually going to get a stronger boost if you do the calc that way. And I believe that is not how this is calced. This is a more appropriate way to calc it. We're going to, of course, have to get the calculator updated for Gen 9 when it does come out. But at least for now, when you're doing your calcs, to say, oh no, this is so strong, make sure you do it this way, because that is the appropriate way. Alright, where were we? We did that, we did that, good. So, if you're going to terastallize into a typing that's not a primary typing, then you will lose your previous typings, become the new Tera type, and you will get a stab boost because you are that type now, but you won't get any other boost as far as I understand it. So, while it would be nice to get some coverage or to defensively terastallize to maybe dodge a super effective attack, you also won't get any added benefits. So there is a powerful benefit to keeping your type that you normally would get. So just look out for that. Alright, let's talk about some other stuff. We got this here early purchase bonus, sort of like the Snorlaxium, the Munchlax, and the Shiny Beldum, and whatever the heck they gave us in Gen 8 that I don't remember because it wasn't that interesting. This is a pretty fun Pikachu. It's Flying Pikachu. I like Flying Pikachu. We have Surfing Pikachu readily available at this point, but it's still relatively hard to get Flying Pikachu, as I recall. So it's nice to have that in the game, and it looks really nice. I think this looks like it could be like an ornament on a Christmas tree almost, or something like that. Looks really, really cool, and all you have to do is get it on your mystery gift, and this will have a Tera type of Flying. So that's nice. Of course, Fly, not the strongest move ever, but Flying Pikachu, it's a thing ever since Gen 1. So you wanna get that for sure. Alright, other things to note, just really fast as we wrap this up. Here we have the customization options. You can customize character eye shape, mouth shape, and more other things. So that's more than we could previously do, and that will give these characters some more personality. That may have also contributed to why these characters look so much like dolls and why people were criticizing them so much before, because they wanted to make it as easy as they could on themselves to customize, right, to change mouth and eye shape and whatever. And so they chose an art style that was conducive to that. Now, notice here that the Academy has 4 different kinds of uniforms in total. So that means, as far as I understand it, you only get the choice of 4 uniforms. It'll be like what? Short sleeve, long sleeve, and heck if I know the rest. I've never worn a school uniform before. But you're only going to get 4 kinds. So that's going to be really limited base clothing options, unfortunately. But then there are going to be a bunch of accessories. I'm assuming the accessories include things like the jackets that we see, and the hats, and the glasses, and whatever. So hopefully we get a lot of good accessories, because otherwise we're going to be stuck with these uniforms, and I don't want to be stuck with those the entire time, but it looks like that's all we have. Okay, next up. So here we've got the Friends feature. There is going to be online. Of course, you got to pay for it because you got to pay for an NSO. But when you get it, what can you do? You can play with your friends to do these Terra dens, which we'll talk about in a second. And you can ride along with each other. Sort of funny seeing all these legendaries lined up like that. It looks sort of funny. You can bring your Pokemon out, which I guess is fine. I don't know how much I care about that, but sure, whatever. And then you can trade, and it looks like, I guess you can trade in real life. It's sort of interesting, because sort of like in Gen 7, I feel like this is going to slow things down. In Gen 6 and other games like that, you had the GTS, which made trading really fast. But it seems like this is going to be sort of like Gen 7, where it slows things down. At least you can link trade at all, because otherwise they would make you do it over Pokemon Home, which would be sort of even more annoying. And then of course you can battle, and we'll see how they actually implement that. Finally, we've got these Tera Raid Battles. Tera Raid Battle is just sort of like the dens, but they did make a change to this. So in the dens previously, you had to wait for everybody to choose their move, and now you don't have to wait for that. So I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of mechanic changes. So before they had the shields, and you had multiple turns, like I think you had 10 turns to be able to beat the Pokemon, and now of course you don't necessarily have to sync your moves up with the other trainers. So we'll see how that works, because I can't imagine I could just spam really fast moves, break the shield really fast, and then another trainer could use a really powerful move, and then it would be way easier. I have no clue how this is supposed to work, but we'll see. In any case, we can see here that this is a water type Terra Gardevoir, and again, like I said before, there will be a way to fix the fact that Gardevoir doesn't get any attacking water moves. But I believe this is probably going to end up being the only way to get Terra Pokemon that don't match their original typing. Maybe that's not the case, but I think it might end up being that way. Sort of like Gigantamax Pokemon were in Gen 8. Now, there may also be an item to sort of like Dynamax Curry, where you can change what your typing is, but don't quote me on that. We'll just have to wait and see. And then we got this cheering mechanic, so this time apparently you don't have to wait to be knocked out to cheer. You can just randomly cheer, which actually sort of makes this more interesting. So I'm actually sort of interested to see how they implement this. It could be more interesting, or it could just be the 3 out of 4 trainers just sit there in the Wi-Fi and wait for the one guy to do all the work and then catch them on at the end. So it could be terribly implemented as well, but that will remain to be seen. Anyway, that was a lot of information today that we got. At least the Terra information was a lot. There wasn't actually that much besides that, except for a couple Pokemon. We still haven't seen the final evolutions of the starters, which I think most people is what they want to see at this point, besides the gimmick. And hopefully we get another trailer in the future that will give us that information. And then besides that, we're getting pretty close to the release now. So I don't really know how much else they need to show at this point. So let me know what you guys think. I'll be hopefully coming out with at least a few more videos regarding Scarlet and Violet in the future. And I'll catch you guys next time.